can we make a very important aspect of our livelihood, which are access to the medicine, decentralized?
Soheil Mansouri, Associate Professor at DTU, Technical University of Denmark.
Think about it. I mean, producing a hot dog is a production. Producing a drug is also a production. Of course, their complexity is different. That's why I'm inviting everybody. I mean, come join. There is a space for everybody, but it also doesn't mean that decentralized manufacturing should replace centralized manufacturing. There are economic and volume thresholds that these facilities can afford to make a difference. It's also like when we are talking about quantum computers, the intention is not to replace the general purpose computer. The intention is to solve the harder problems that are infeasible with the general purpose computer. Now, we want to use the modular concepts to solve the piece of the manufacturing that is currently infeasible in the centralized manufacturing. And that needs the effort and the research and development and investment to identify those areas and tap into them. That know-how is the key here. That know-how is the key that will drive the future. Think of Tesla as a car. But in reality, it's a driver behavior data acquisition infrastructure. Now they are prepared to be the first mover for the self-driving paradigm. Now imagine that you can, now the car's infrastructure, the car fleet, if they can drive on their own, serve different people, that driver behavior, now when we are talking about the organisms and manufacturing, that behavioral understanding data from the manufacturing and the hyperparameters for that will be the driver for the next generation in manufacturing.
Bonded by Science, proudly presented by Noble Blocks.
Soheil, thank you so much for joining us today on Bonded by Science. Very much looking forward to hearing about your journey, both as an academic, but also as an entrepreneur. Finding out really what truly drives you at the end of the day. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much, Shelley. It's certainly an honor for me to share some of my thoughts with you today. And basically, to me, by nature, I'm a curious person. So what really drives me is to solve the right problem. And for me, identifying what the problem is often more important than the journey that it takes to find that solution, because often we see that there are many solutions developed for ill-defined problems. So I am very excited about the problems, to understand the problems, their dimensions, and what it takes to solve them.
Okay, so let's start with one problem that you highlighted to me in one of the first conversations where we met. And if I remember correctly, you said something along the lines that about 60% of valid pharmaceutical options never really reach market. And that actually blew my mind, because I was thinking a lot of biomarkers that are identified in early phase, so at bench side, rarely even translate over to clinical trials or clinical studies. So we get only a fraction. But you're saying that the ones that actually make it through, only about 60% of those move forward. Would you say that is a problem?
The thing here is that in course of developing every product, right? So there is a need. Some needs are greater in terms of economics. Some needs are smaller in terms of economics, but the need is there. So what we are actually talking about this large proportion is pretty much for the small indication and medicine for smaller populations that could range from therapeutics for rare diseases, for vaccines, for cancer, and the economics of a scale sometimes is not there for them to end up being affordable and accessible for the patients to be used, or insurance companies be willing to cover them easily. So there are multiple dimensions to this, but the aspect that I am particularly interested is the manufacturing piece. What it takes to manufacture these at an affordable cost, so to breaking down this cost or reduced costs.
Okay, so just to like reiterate, so that statistic is because some of the products that could actually go to market that are valid, they are addressing a small market. So basically the profit margin isn't large enough to drive it to the other side. And so that is one problem. But I know that you are working on, I don't know if micromanufacturing is the right term to use here. Maybe you can correct me. But I know that you are working on research that support the development of micromanufacturing so that you can bring, that missing 40% so that you can make it potentially more profitable to those that want to invest in its production. And by doing that, some of your research is focusing on like quantum computing or quantum generative algorithms, some topics that we can unfold. But I'm quite curious to know, like, how realistic is it on a scale from like 0 to 100 that some of these approaches that you are doing in your research will reach market in the next, say, decade?
Let me go back to my first statement, my interest in the problem. So the problem is that there has been, as much as there has been effort in developing new drugs and new molecules and identifying those or discovering those, there has been very little effort in innovation in manufacturing. So when I actually talk about micromanufacturing, very simplistically, it means a smaller in size, but it also means efficiency. It also means how can we actually reduce the redundancies, increase the time to market, reduce the number of trial and errors that we do. So now this micromanufacturing could be realized in different forms. Either it could be a small factories like some of the articles that I've published or some of the releases that we have been that can move around, or we are talking about even this could be fixed facilities, but with more efficient and more insight into the understanding of the current challenges. So once we understand where the current challenges are, that opens the door for innovation in manufacturing. So what I'm after is innovation in biologics manufacturing. We can actually tap into making the processes more efficient, that we can bring the costs down in a way that we can make some of these drugs more affordable. Once the cost of manufacturing goes down, obviously it is also meaningful to say that the cost of the end product should also be lower.
So why do you suppose that, like, I think we're really fortunate to have someone like you that is interested in like improving the manufacturing processes. But why do you suppose it's lagged so much compared to other advancements within, biopharmaceuticals?
I think it's a little bit maybe a cultural thing. Also, so development of the state of the art in that direction. Obviously, there is a lot of innovation also in manufacturing. So I'm not saying that there's no innovation. The volume of innovation on the manufacturing end compared to resources that are deployed to discovery is currently not proportional. So at the rate that we are discovering the molecules for various diseases, etc., work has to be done for the accessibility and manufacturing of this. So at the point, if a lot of these efforts are successful, we will reach a plateau that there is not enough capacity. So when there is not enough capacity, in principle, the drug developers, corporations, pharmaceuticals need to choose. Do they save the lives of the larger population or the smaller population? So in this way, nobody is really doing anything evil or anything. It's simply a collateral. So what we want to actually address here is that we want to avoid that collateral for a smaller population. Let's say for the vaccines that maybe 500,000 people or 100,000 people in specific regions need that in developing countries, in the global south, in many parts of the world. Also during the pandemic, we also saw the cold storage chain issues, etc., etc. So there are multiple opportunities, not just for me, but for many others in the ecosystem to come into the perspective. So for my own selfish reason, I would rather invite everybody to come and compete because um, because we want to actually tap into this, create the awareness, be successful, and show that this can be done. And this pattern can eventually also propagate to other manufacturing types. Modularity is nothing new that I'm tapping to, but we are tapping into the problem. One aspect of possibly solving this is modularity, but modularity alone without innovation in what goes into the modules, the advancements, technology, and how you solve the complexity will not also be that viable. There are multiple layers that need to come together and integrate it to deliver the solution finally.
So if we just go back a little bit, you talked about capacity. So just to make it super clear, so when you refer to capacity, you mean the current ability for existing pharmaceutical setups to produce needed vaccines or other types of medication. And when that has hit maximum capacity, those setups or organizations, they need to decide. They need to decide what is it that they're going to produce, and that decision is most likely underlined by, profit margins. For example, might not be, but there's probably a good weight placed on it. Now, what you're proposing here is you're saying that we could introduce some modularity in that capacity. And how is it that you see modularity actually coming into existence? Like when you say modularity, what do you mean by that?
Modularity, as I mentioned, could be modules of a smaller pieces of the factory that can come together. They can be decentralized, spread out around the globe. If larger facilities and larger needs are there, they come together. So when I'm talking about this type of modularity, when it comes to a spatial dimensions of a factory, it's about logistics. It's a lot about logistics. But what goes into these factories takes innovation, takes a more sensor-driven, data-driven approach, which none of these are anything new, to be honest. What needs to happen is that they need to be orchestrated and integrated in a systematic way that out of multiple opportunities that are there, the solution can be delivered economically and in a viable fashion to address the main challenge. The main challenge is that people are dying. Some people are dying because they don't afford. And they don't afford because there's someone evil that doesn't want to pay them. They don't afford. They don't afford because the system, the whole structure, cannot afford to provide it and to them. Some other people are dying, of course, because the medicine is not there. Needs to be discovered. Now it is being discovered, and basically, is it going to be provided to them or not? So the thing is that when we are looking into the drug discovery, of course, I mean the discovery people typically target to find a particular drug. But there are also other discoveries along the way that the scientists come up with. But necessarily, some have to be dropped because a priori they are not fit into the economic model of the resources deployed for that development. Some drugs, let's say some gene therapeutics, monoclonal antibodies, the small indication variants also do do exist, right? But if you fall in the category of the small indication that the main drug that is being produced, the answer is sorry, you got the wrong cancer. The answer is not sorry, the drug was not there. So I hated to say that some patients go to the hospital, through the medical system, the doctor puts the blame on the patient saying, sorry, you did not respond to the medicine. But the grand question here is that, was there a medicine that was not available, or there was not a medicine that had to be discovered? So I'm talking about the portion that the discovery is standing on the shelf because the economics are not justified. And that justification is fair because we can't let the bigger population die because of the small population if you have a limited capacity for manufacturing. That's very, very like this.
Right. That's when we use numbers to build a case, right? So,
Yeah.
but we know that it's more than just numbers because there's a lot of emotion involved in here, and there's a lot of like general well-being and
Here we are engineers. Here we are engineers and we are scientists. What the emotions would not help us here. We need to understand the problem from the multiple dimensions and find a solution, and that is what we want to do. It takes time, but we have to go through it. Even issues like even tuberculosis, right? I mean, tuberculosis is. I mean, we read in the news and elsewhere that it is starting to become an issue after decades. And again, in Europe. Now, there are future challenges as well that are coming in the future. How much ready are we ready as the human society to be fast, efficient, and flexible? So these are basically the three keywords. I want to figure out how can we be faster, be more flexible, and be more efficient. Flexibility meaning that by not spending a lot more money into the capitals, and still, how can we use the existing infrastructure to be adaptable and to adopt them very fast to the emerging needs? How can we be efficient that to use the new infrastructure by innovation or optimizing the new infrastructure to be more cost effective in terms of manufacturing and being fast. Simply, I mean, the speed here is important. If you get sick, necessarily the virus or the bacteria or the cancer does not wait. We cannot put a pause, say, please wait, I'm going to pay you monthly some salary or something, cancer. You wait, don't stop your activity until I figure it out. That's where the people and human population are affected.
so I'm quite curious to know when we have smaller populations that have a particular condition. You brought up cancer as one because there's a whole variation. If you go to existing setups today, what would be the magnitude of like a batch that they would run to create a vaccine or medication for some of the conditions that you mentioned earlier? Like, what is the magnitude in terms of numbers here?
Well, it really depends also on the host organisms and the technologies. So, for example, today RNA technologies are very promising. So they do reduce the volumes substantially. Self-amplifying RNAs are very interesting to look into from manufacturing point of view because the amount that you need per dose is much less compared to other some other types because self-amplifying RNAs use your own body as a factory to populate and so on, so on and so on. So you see, so now when we are talking about manufacturing, it can have multiple dimensions. It's not ignoring the advancements in the molecular biology. It's not the advancements to ignore those things. these go together. When we are talking about manufacturing, we should also realize that some of the new drug developments are using our body as a manufacturing plant.
That's super interesting. And a whole like I believe there was some research around like skin cancer research, especially like where you will inject I don't know if the medication like in the skin rather than traditionally how it was done, and then that would self propagate. So you would do like a lot of small micro injection as opposed to like one large one, and then that would be quite useful. It's definitely an area that is outside
Well,
my domain
outside my
expertise.
expertise too. So outside my expertise too. So I have no claim that I'm an expert in those areas. What we are what I am mainly interested to focus on are mRNAs uh, at the moment, because also across the community I see a lot of development on mRNAs, and I also see and research is starting on the manufacturing piece. And when I talk about manufacturing piece, we are way more looking compartmentalized, just only at one piece. Myself as a systems engineer, I'm more looking into how I integrate from a multi-scale point of view. Solving one problem on one end necessarily does not mean that we have solved the problem them end to end. And so what we are trying to achieve here, by combining innovation in the logistics, by combining innovation in the data today, also I want to emphasize on the data piece. A lot of advancements have happened on the sensor technologies and data acquisition and so on. So we also want to move from a manufacturing that is completely recipe driven, whether you are lucky or you are not lucky to find the right manufacturing recipe, by being more data driven, more sensor driven, towards a more know-how understanding of these manufacturing. That know-how is the key here. That know-how is the key that will drive the future. Think of Tesla as a car, okay? So Tesla is a car. Yes, it's a car, but in reality, it's a driver behavior data acquisition infrastructure. Without this data, the Tesla was the first that actually moved this to this paradigm. Now they are prepared to be the first mover for the self-driving paradigm. More than 90% of the lifetime of a car, the car is still, it's not used. Now imagine that you can, now the car's infrastructure, the car fleet, if they can drive on their own, serve different people, none of us necessarily need to have the car. We can, but that driver behavior, now when we are talking about the organisms and manufacturing, that behavioral understanding data from the manufacturing and the hyperparameters for that will be the driver for the next generation in manufacturing. And that's not only limited to biotech. Hopefully we can succeed here, but then we can propagate this to advanced materials, other things.
Okay, Saeed, do you have any idea, like, if you look at typical manufacturing processes today, because I know that you've studied many, and you have quite a few different use case scenarios where you've like built up some of these decision making sensors, um, and simulation and modeling as well of different plants and different pharmaceutical setups. But I'm really quite interested first in establishing like how big is a batch, because I know that your research goes from promoting from going from batch to like a continuous process, and I'm just super curious to know, like, do you know like how big a batch is for like some of the medicine that you So like, is it like 100, doses, or is it 1,000?
Some batches go to thousands of cubic meters. Some batches are less than a liter in the
Okay.
milliliter scale. But the pathway to get to the final production batch volume is not a one go. So you go from a shake flask or a vial volume that you produce your thing, you do your analytics on it, let's say molecular biology scientists, chemists, etc. But that's not even necessarily the production volume that can serve. The production volume target is a distinct economic target based on the market minimum selling price of the product, etc.
Right.
That's to achieve, and
Right.
that can vary from product for product. But there is a journey. There is a journey. There is a journey from that discovery piece to the production.
Right. And we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get to the journey. I just wanted to first establish like how, like, because when people think about vaccines and doses, I mean, I don't think I've ever sat down and thought, how many vaccines do they get per batch? Like, I've never really considered that as an individual. So I was just thinking when you brought up that there are many smaller markets that are not being served. And I was just wondering, like, why don't we just create this massive batch? And not even if it was possible, like, because I know based on what you just told me that it's not always going to be possible. But why don't we just make a whole bunch and store them? Like, what is happening there? What is it that I don't know? Like, why can't we just say, okay, we're gonna run this for 2 months and store it, and we'll have enough for like 10 years. So what's happening there? Why can't we do that?
Well, there's also a cost associated with that. If you and the capacity of the facilities. I mean, some of the vaccines they don't even go to a manufacturing facility. They go to chicken eggs in South America.
They go where?
To chicken eggs. So you use chicken eggs
Ah,
as the production medium, right? So there is a lack of capacity, and again, you need any product is developed based on an identified need. So it is also not necessarily smart that I start producing unless it is a national security disaster kind of thing that you said, okay, I'm going to produce this and store them for the rough for the rough days. I'm sure in some areas this is happening, but there's also a shelf life associated
yes.
with this.
They expire, right? So the
This
vaccines, for example, they expire.
many of them have protein constructs and so on, and then it's not like that they can last there forever. So the way that you need to think about this is not like really canned food that we can produce. We can produce them, and then we keep them in the tins, and basically 40 years, 50 years ago, later, I mean, we can use them even if you discover them 1,000 layers. Some maybe, but there is always a cost associated. So is there a need for that? If you ask me, necessarily there is not a need for this kind of pile up kind of thing, because that can also include create social disturbances from an equitable access to this. Because if what if some bad guys have all the thing that you need, and then they don't give it to you? So what we want to do for our societies is that we want to enable our societies to be resilient in manufacturing. We want them to be flexible in manufacturing, and we want them to be able to, as fast as possible, cope with the drugs that are being discovered, approved, showing the necessary efficacy for a fast forward to the market and reaching the patients.
But I think it's really important to first establish that, number one, we're hitting our maximum capacity for production. Number two, it's driven by how many people it can serve right now. And number three, that when you produce, it's not always possible to store it for as long as you would like to. So you can't take there are not other strategies to stock up, so to speak. So I know, and I read some of the media articles that were produced around some of your research, and what I discovered there that really struck a chord with me was this concept of going from a centralized production to a decentralized production. And I think this is also where you've been pushing this concept of being modular. I know you can be modular within something, but you can also be modular in a more distributed sense or decentralized sense. So by being flexible and by being resilient, and also I'm guessing that if you have all of those three things that you are feeling so very important about or so passionate about, it also creates a sense of independence for different countries in order to help their populations potentially survive a pandemic, a local outbreak.
I mean, this modularity, this is where I'm trying to emphasize. This modularity is nothing that anybody has a protection IP or anything on it. Think of a hot dog truck. That's
A
a
hot dog
modular,
truck.
that's
Okay.
a modular hot dog
Production on wheels. Yes.
production and distribution. Either you can go to 50th Street, second block to get your hot dog, or the truck is moving already. We have decentralized food trucks around the cities. We have decentralized biofuel production. I mean, we have many decentralized infrastructure. The whole point here is that what I'm trying to advocate and I'm trying to do through innovation is that can we make a very important aspect of our livelihood, which are access to the medicine, decentralized. That is something that has not happened at large. And I'm not talking about, I mean, think about it. I mean, producing a hot dog is a production. Producing a drug is also a production. Of course, their complexity is different. That's why I'm inviting everybody. I mean, come, join, let's do it together. The market, and there is a space for everybody, but it also doesn't mean that decentralized manufacturing should replace centralized manufacturing. There are economic and volume thresholds that these facilities can afford to make a difference. It's not that, it's also like when we are talking about quantum computers and classic computers, a quantum computer is never capable of replacing the general purpose computers. The intention is not to replace the general purpose computer. The intention is to solve the harder problems that are infeasible with the general purpose computer. Now, we want to use the modular concepts to solve the piece of the manufacturing that is currently infeasible in the centralized manufacturing. And that needs the effort and the research and development and investment to identify those areas and tap into them.
Okay. If we go back to the food on wheels analogy, it's also possible based on some of the research that you're doing that it can change what it produces. You mentioned hot dogs, but it can go to fish and chips or anything like that, right? So it's very, like you said, it's very it's adaptable. How small are we talking here? If we actually said, okay, this is going to happen, it's going to come. Because when I was reading some of the articles, I was like, oh, this reminds me of when I was watching Star Trek like 20 years ago. And, you ask for a cup of coffee and you'd get your cup of coffee. I mean, is it going to be something where we could potentially get to the level where we say, I need a single dose of this particular vaccine, and then it will produce it for us? I mean, could we get that far?
Possibly, and I know many of the very bright minds are looking into using the robots, using basically other advancements and so on. So as I said, it's not a single technology that is going to solve the piece. It's not just AI, it's just not only quantum, it's not the manufacturing unit operations. It's a system architecture. And from an engineering discipline point of view, I belong to a rather small community of chemical engineers within the process systems engineering domain that I work on this architectural piece. I do need other disciplines. I do need other people. I do need other inventions and innovations coming from other angles to bind them together, to making a collage of something that works sufficiently. Now, again, the need has to be there. If you think of a Henry Ford a T model, I may be wrong about the exact time periods, but in 1920s, it was a car for the rich people. By 1940, it was the car for average American. How did that happen? By innovation
In manufacturing.
in the manufacturing.
Yes. Yes.
Now, how can we democratize medicine? How can we democratize advanced materials? How can we democratize sustainability? But part of it is in innovation in the manufacture.
Yes. And the manufacturing is not, like you said, it's not about just having it all sitting in one location in one country. It's about having distributed systems, production systems set up, or even mobile. Could it be is mobile? Could it also be
It
mobile?
could be mobile. Yeah, it could be mobile. You could put it on wheels. You could put it on a plane. You could put it on ship. But one thing that people need to understand, and this is the struggle that we have with some people, and they're welcome to do it. But what I tell them is that if you just buy the equipment off the shelf without having the ability to innovate and work out this architecture and put them in a box, right? You are not going to make it that big. You are just making a smaller version. That those facilities could be very useful for scale up, for these kind of things. And there are multiple players. I mean, in California, in Massachusetts. I mean, now there is a company in Massachusetts that is actually renting out cubicles to startups that they have a small volume production, single use production equipment they can use, rent it, use it. I mean, that's another kind of modularity, dividing a big hall into 100 compartments, let 100 people do their different things. So one thing that people need to understand is that this modularity is not just one thing and so on. It has to be tried out and tuned and based on the efficiencies and how you can advance it. So here, modularity is an important piece, but it's not the necessary piece on its own. The necessary piece is data.
Right. And that's where it
Moving
gets
from recipe driven to know-how. The know-how is the necessary element to success.
okay. So let's unfold the complexities, because I know this is really where you thrive. So you talked about that we need a lot of sensors, and that those sensors, they give rise to data.
Not a lot necessarily, just a correction. I'm not saying we need a lot of sensors. We need sensors.
Okay. So we need sensors to give rise to the data that we can then utilize to make better decisions and move away from, as you said, simple know-how. And I don't want to say simple because that would actually be inaccurate. So it's accumulated knowledge that it exists kind of in a silo. So then we use that data to start taking decisions on how to produce and control, I guess, also the quality of production. So can you walk us through, because you have terms like upstream and downstream processes in a plant. Can you walk us through visually, like, what do we need to imagine, like when you talk about, production, and once we have sensors in place, I don't know how many, I guess it depends on what it is you're producing. How does that give rise to like the bulk of your research now?
Let me simplify it. 10 sensors, right? A lot of, when we are talking about sensors, we are talking about measuring a property that we can attribute it to quality, okay? So now when we are in different setups, let's say when the doctor puts the oscilloscope on the heart, that oscilloscope is a sensor. It is capturing the basically sound of the heart and lungs passing through the doctor's ear. The doctor makes the informed decision. If you don't have an oscilloscope, what can you do? You lean on patients. That's all you can do. You can lean on patient's chest in a quiet place and try to listen as carefully as you can to make an informed decision. If you can do none of those, then you look into other features in the patient temperature. It's also the same thing in manufacturing. Some properties, in order to make an informed decision, you need the right measurement. The challenge that we have today is that we don't have often the right measurement at the point of action. It takes time until we may take a sample, go back to the lab, and so on and so on, and come back and make a decision. I mean, the patient may die. Same thing with the manufacturing, right? And when it comes to the production systems, and manufacturing is a very simple concept. Means to ends. You start with a set of raw material requirements. Through some means, you arrive to an end. So now, if you think of, let's say, chemical or biological processes, you convert some raw material to the product, you produce waste, you need to purify this. So the part that we are doing, the bulk production, where the reaction often happens, we call it the upstream, the purification train. We call it the downstream. And this is an end-to-end process. In the pharmaceutical batch, the traceability is very important. So if something goes wrong in your reactor, you cannot just fix it and add the reactor and go back. It goes all the way to the end. You have to shut the whole thing down and start over if things go wrong. So now, by being more sensor driven and analytical driven, we want to go towards the know-how. So when I'm talking about the data, I'm not just talking about the AI and data, AI and this kind of thing. We want to back it up. We have to back it up with the mechanistic understanding, with the first principle understanding of the phenomena that is happening in this process. Data alone necessarily is not going to give us much leverage. It can give us the leverage when it is combined with our understanding from the physics, chemistry, and biology in a hybrid form. That's the way to go.
Would you say that existing pharmaceutical productions today have these sensors in place to generate the data, any data? So like, I know there are certain like failure mechanism sensors that are in place, like temperature and whatnot.
Sensor business is a big business. There are sensors for various things. The question here is that how much of that data you can infer to useful information to optimize.
Correct. And are you saying that pharmaceutical setups today don't have those sensors in place?
They have a lot of sensors, but they also don't have a lot of sensors to measure the things that are critical.
Okay, so it's not just that. Okay, so you're also saying that the types of sensors are not yet there, or maybe they're not yet developed, or they don't exist.
Some of them are not yet even developed. If you want to measure the protein concentration in a fermentation tank in a real-time fashion to evaluate the cell viability, all these kind of things, I mean, those kind of sensors are being developed. But the question here is what um, we are developing is, and some of the things that we have worked on is to go towards the ensembles of this. So we are talking about an ensemble of sensors, models, hardware equipment, and mechanistic models. So these are ensembles of agents that are of different nature but need to work with each other. That is when I'm talking about the data, it's about the ensembling of these multiple pieces that are not intuitively are of the same nature, but they need to deliver the result. It's the same thing. I mean, I keep using our human body because I'm constantly fascinated about what we can do with our body,
Yeah, we're amazing.
right?
I think people forget how amazing we are.
But if you think about our whole skin is a sensor platform, eyes, ears, nervous system. So our human body is heavily sensor driven to the tip of our finger, to every tenth of millimeter of our body, we can sense things. So we are a highly sensor driven, and that gives rise to our brain. That gives rise to the learning. That gives rise to the things that we can do. Now, the more we can actually do that in the manufacturing, how many, and from a infrastructure point of view, our human body sensor infrastructure is rather simple on the surface.
On the surface,
On
I
the
would say.
on the surface, but
Even a sense of touch is very, very special.
it is our brain that is making the inference
That's true.
of all this information. So now what we are think of developing is basically to build this kind of overarching decision-making infrastructure that encompasses the sensory properties that we can mount and enable more on the manufacturing pieces of equipment. The inference of those, you know, are models, are the templates.
Let's wait before we get there because I feel like we just need to back up a bit. So right now we have established that pharmaceutical setups exist. They are most decentralized and they mostly focus on producing products that fulfill the greatest need. And the setups that we have now are potentially have reached their capacity, and therefore we need alternative solutions in order to enhance and facilitate those processes. And that can be done in multiple ways. One is to make existing setups more efficient. The other, of course, as you have pointed out in some of your research, is to develop, smaller systems that can produce locally. They both are not in competition. They could be very complementary to each other. Now, if we go to the big setup, the one that we're talking about now, we have established that there are sensors in place, but maybe not the right types of sensors at the right locations, giving information at the right time. And we potentially may not even know what we need to sense in the reaction or in the processes that are currently set up. And what I understand what you're doing is you're saying, well, let's look at the whole process. Let's take like one specific vaccine or one specific, therapeutic, and let's map it out completely from end to end and try to simulate that production. When you simulate that production end to end, you can then see, okay, where do you need sensors? Do we have gaps in information? And then ideally at the end, if you have enough information, using advances in computation, you could infer better decision making. Would that be a correct sort of summary of what is happening now?
Yes, and I can add one other example. I mean, um, think of providing affordable and accessible internet to everybody on the surface of this planet, the little Starlink satellites,
Yeah.
right?
That's
But the Starlink satellites would have never been possible with the Russian rockets or NASA shuttles, $500 million every single launch. So, irrespective of the political opinions, what Elon Musk achieved was to blow up that whole system
yeah.
and saying we are going to do it with relaunchable and reusable rockets. He has not invented the rocket. He has not invented most of the other things. It's in reinventing the whole system and blowing it up, rethinking it ground up. So one thing that I am advocating for, and I want to do in my entrepreneurship journey through various initiatives, is to blow up this system, building it ground up to prepare it for the next big mission as human society we're developing. Without relaunchability and reusability of the rockets, now Starlink, now Starship, and these kind of things, we can never make it to Moon or Mars. If the vision is going there, we also need to rethink our processes, and there's no way that we can go back and retrofit what is existing today.
This is great. This is great. Where would you start? What if you could start from the beginning right now? Like if you had all the money and let's say all the technical expertise, left-hand person, right-hand person, everyone that you needed on your team, where would you start? Like what would you say, okay, let's just forget how things are currently done. How would you kick it off?
I don't try to reinvent anything. I try to look into what is out there and gives me the efficiency to fulfill the need. So and part of it so I will go towards reusable and relaunchable manufacturing uh, setups, and that's all what I do in whatever form factor that I can achieve it, right? But that form factor is not my biggest concern, because once the problem is solved, form factor is implicit element of the problem. Well, we can already say, okay, we put them in the container and so on, because of we have the ISO standards for movability. They can pass through bridges, and everything in our society is built based on that form factor. But who knows? Maybe one day I can put one of these on one of these relaunchable rockets, shoot it into space, and it lands somewhere else in a fraction of time. Maybe one day this enables human life in other planets, so we can build our all resources that we need to establish the human colony. Also in remote areas on this planet, for me, there is only a planet A. There is very few chances for majority of this population of this planet to go to planet B. So I will focus on planet A, which is our planet. But there are many areas that we can provide, and eventually there will be a symbiosis of micromanufacturings across food, pharma, water, energy, and waste, that they will symbiotically work together and deliver the products.
So it's not about starting over necessarily.
No, it's rethinking with what we have.
Yeah, so retrofitting what we have, which is also a very sustainable thinking mode, I would say. So retrofitting what we have, and that includes, like you said,
It's the thing also with Tesla cars. I mean, Tesla has not invented the car. They have not built a car with 3 wheels, and or a flying car or something. From a car point of view, it's the same car, but they have brought in the innovation of future into that.
Well, they have innovated parts, right? And they
Of
have
course, there are innovations that have to be adopted, but the concept of car doesn't need to be reinvented. It's still a car with 4 wheels. You buy it as a car. It takes you from point A to point B. It looks like any other car, but innovation has happened into it to enable it for doing more things.
So what would be the Tesla equivalent for biopharmaceuticals then? If you really want to draw the parallel, is it just about going into what we have now and just like you just go in and like innovate parts of that production? So I think most people, when you think about vaccine productions or any other types of medicine production, you don't really think about all the, parts that are involved in the production plant. Like some people know what a reactor is because people learned how beer is made. And that's a bioreactor, right? Or yogurt, that sort of stuff. But what are the parts? Like how big, like how complex is this? And like, can you give us an understanding of just how complex the production is?
Well, a production is certainly complex. It's multi-scale. There are effects going for all the way from the molecular scale and from a business point of view to the enterprise-wide skills that need to be understood. So this multi-scale understanding is essential. What thinking systematically can enable us is that we don't, from a systems thinking point of view, when we want to address a complexity, we don't jump into the whole complexity in one go. We logically break down the problem into smaller subsets of smaller problems that are more manageable to conceive and analyze. Then we work at the relationship between these components. Of course, then we identify the bottlenecks in the small piece, and then we target our innovation to the identified bottleneck. So we don't need to change everything. We need to understand where the bottleneck is, focus on that piece, and changing that or adopting to that to an emerging technology. Then we regroup the pieces together. We reconstruct the complexity to a new complex system.
Let's just take like a very specific example, right? So you had done some work around like the Zika virus. I think I read that in some of your
I haven't done.
papers.
We did work around COVID.
Oh, COVID. Okay. Let's talk about the production of COVID then, because like what would if you were to map out that simulation, what would be like the first initial steps? Like if I was to look at the diagram, and I know it's just full of all sorts of things. There's heaters and reactors and steam that comes off and all sorts.
If you ask me about that first thing, I mean, within a modular setup, my first place to look into is to look into basically understanding the overall process dynamics. A major aspect in manufacturing is to manage your supply chain. So connecting your supply chain, meaning the people who have to provide you all the material that you need to do the production, managing the complexity of the supply chain with the complexity of existing basically equipment. Step one. Step two now is that within that complexity, we will look into maximizing the profits while we minimize the costs. Because if I'm building a for-profit business, it has to be profitable. Somebody has to pay the bills, right? So the more we can achieve. So profitability, a lot of people look at profitability actually from purely economic point of view. Okay, the investors and so on become richer and get more money, the owners. But actually, profitability is a metric of efficiencies that you are achieving. So what I will do is to set the profitability target and then doing the incremental improvement to reach the profitability target. But there are also multiple components around it. I mean, in this concept, from a no manu- from a manufacturing point of view, necessarily, I don't need to own the innovator drug. The innovator drug is for somebody else. We are only manufacturing for them. So depending on the dynamics of that relationship, this innovation angle can also change. So what I'm looking for is the generalizability. How can we actually arrive into a configuration that is the most generalizable across a group of customers and group of products that can be addressed? And as I said, at the moment, a large focus of my activities on mRNA in general RNA type of technologies, because these are the technologies that do not require volume as such. They can use our body as the other end of the manufacturing piece. So our body compensates for the volumes that otherwise we had to create and so on. So
I would actually like to take this as an opportunity to switch and talk a little bit more about your experience in entrepreneurship, because I know a lot of the ideas and the strategies that you're putting out, and your passion for creating systems that are, I think a simple way to say it would be just creating systems that are smarter, or setups that are smarter. Um, you have spun out some of your ideas, and I know you're working in the commercialized setting, and I think that's actually a big step for any academic entrepreneur, right, to make that transition. So I would like to talk to you about your experiences in doing that, like taking some of your ideas out. And
for me, of course, scientific dissemination, publishing the results, training the PhD students, the graduate level, undergraduate level students, teaching is very important as an academic. But ultimately, a part of the service to the society is to make some of these innovations that have an opportunity to go outside the university door and make an impact. However, the moment that if you want to spin an idea out of the university door, the interests and dimensions may dramatically change from an academic
from
viewpoint.
an academic way of thinking.
Because now you are in a territory that you need to build an organization. You need to be part of an organization, because necessarily, if I want to be super selfish and say, oh, I can do everything, that's wrong. That's a lie. I can I can do everything. I'm good at what I'm good at, right? But the business has certain requirements or legal aspects, and the partnerships that you make, especially in the early stages of spinning out an idea. You typically share it with the people around you. Um, and sometimes you partner up with them, but those people, no matter how good a friend or collaborator they think to you, they may not be the right founder. And I've experienced that also, so in a couple of situations. So the way to get out of it is also a bit of education across. And I think in Denmark there is a good degree of this education, at least within the younger people, that spinning out an idea, even if the economic projections are massive, it's going to be a $10 billion business, which it may be, does not mean that today that you form the company, you have reached that.
No, that's very
People,
true.
people need to
Yeah.
be aware of it only results in reward if you deliver the project. Before you deliver on the project, the rewards cannot be expected. So passion is really important here. People being passionate, and for me particularly, I'm really passionate about solving the problem. What pisses me off is that someone gets on my way that they're not passionate about solving the problem, because that is pound foolish. If you don't solve the problem, those other people and other partner in the partnership and may not, irrespective of the end goal objectives, get what they had achieved. So everybody has to focus on diligently solving the problem from in various aspects: economics of it, business of it, science of it, legal aspect of it, fundraising, etc. But all these pieces need to come coherently together to deliver a project successfully.
I would definitely like to ask you some questions about your experiences in entrepreneurship. One of them is like you've now had the experience of, you said friends or colleagues that you would choose as a co-founder. What do you look for now? Like maybe when you first started, you looked for something, and now that you've gone through the process, what would you look for now? So in the beginning, what did you think that you needed? And in the end, where you are now, what do you see as what you need? Are they the same?
Passion is important. Um, Sharing the values is important. You know, these days I'm looking to partner up with the people who share the same values and maintain the same moral compass.
Uh-huh.
These are very important. Technology is important. The transparency is very important. Transparency is the key to success in any relationship, not only business entrepreneurial relationship. To me, transparency is the key to success in any relationship. Without transparency, transparency means that people need to be truthful in communicating their intentions in an activity. This helps everybody.
Why do you think they wouldn't be in truthful?
It's not about people that are that want to lie or something. It's more about some people being an entrepreneur, being an innovator, it comes with risk, and sometimes people are risk averse. Risk averse people think that they can take the risk, but in reality, they cannot take the risk. You know.
So how do you know that? Like,
I
so if
will
we
never know
say
that easily.
you will never know.
I will
So
never know that easily. So the way to deal with it, so my way of doing this thing is that I try, and I'm not gonna give up, because in this idea, for example, or other ideas, my passion is to solve the problem and help the people. So if in this journey I have to take more risk, I have to go through more challenges, and I will do that. And to be honest, most of the times the relationships work out well, but the existence of an entrepreneurial culture ecosystem around you is very important. um, People who have gone through it, who are leaning toward it, and so on, is really important. And for me, at the end of the day, and in a couple of interviews and so on in the past, I have always said good ideas belong to everyone, and I'm never upset if somebody can do it better than I can do. But go do it.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, don't stop me from doing it.
I agree. I think at least in academia, I saw it a lot too, where people were afraid to share their ideas because they thought somebody would steal them or they wouldn't get credit for it. And I know that sometimes people don't give you credit for certain things, but in my experience, and you probably felt this as well, is that there's it's way harder to implement the ideas than it is to steal them. So good luck is usually what I tell people.
My thing is that I always publish all my best ideas are published, meaning that anybody can go after them without being fearful of anybody going after them. Go after those ideas. If you think there's value in my ideas, go after. I mean,
Yeah, it's a compliment.
and it's a compliment. Go materialize them. It's not that I'm inviting anybody to a challenge, but my point is that entrepreneurship starts with innovation technology, deep tech entrepreneurship at least. It starts with some innovation, technical thing. But loyalty to that mission of why you want to do this is very important. The life of no entrepreneur is a 9-5 job. You need to be willing to make sacrifices. You need to be willing to be ready to fail, because that is the risk that my investors are taking with me. How can I take somebody else's money and say, I'm not in this risk together with you? There is a duty. There is a responsibility to return fully to the people who trust in your ideas and help you. So I always, there is a credit to every single individual on your journey that shared the vision, jumped on the train with you on the same risk profile that you're taking. But an entrepreneur needs to show that they're willing to take the same risk profile. Because if you are not taking the ultimate risk, why should others take the risk?
All right, let's talk about academic risk, because I think when you're thinking risk, a lot of people might just think money. And I would say that in academia, when an academic or someone that has invested a lot of their time and energy in building up an academic career, if they then start to perform entrepreneurship activities, that's not necessarily rewarded in their academic career. So would you say that it's a fair assessment that when an academic goes into entrepreneurship, that they are also risking their career, or is it just about money?
Oh, I mean, there is no guarantees in life. There is no guarantee in life. Nobody can guarantee you anything. There is risk.
Okay, so there's no risk for your academic career. You don't think so? Yes or no?
Uh,
What do you think?
I would say
I'm pushing you into a
there,
corner.
well, I would say there is there is an ecosystemic risk. The ecosystemic risk is that, how is academia defined? Academia is typically defined a bunch of smart people that have come together. They have no interest in other aspects of life. They are one-dimensional. Uh, well, I'm talking about at least the perception that is around it. They do some teaching, they do some research, and they are limited to their own community. Outside their community, nobody really knows what is it that they're doing. And now, all of a sudden, one professor says, "Oh, I want to make a business. I want to build an organization. I want to do this." So, of course, I mean, it doesn't come intuitively to the environment. But I mean, at least when it comes to my institution, I'm very glad that this entrepreneurial understanding today exists. But of course, there are job responsibilities are as well. I as a professor and academic, people need to understand that if they tap into entrepreneurial journey, ultimately they have a fiduciary duty to their employer or employers. So it's very important that you make sure that everybody's a stake and interest in supporting you is um, is protected. And I would say also an aspect that many academics don't know is that I think many academics are very naive when it comes to business structures. Um, the wilderness of the world outside university doors. I mean, outside the university doors, an academic needs to be quite careful to educate themselves and learn how some of these dynamics work. And at the end of the day, be ready to fail. If it fails, that's okay. There is no in my eyes. If I fail in a startup, there is no reputation, particular reputation damage for me if I fail. But again, since academia is built on a winner's attitude, this is the biggest risk. A lot of the ecosystem think that if you go out and you're making a company, you have to succeed. If you fail, oh, everything was trash. No, you failed in a business because of multiple reasons. One of them could be the technology, which is also fine.
Would you say then that there is a risk for academics that venture into entrepreneurship?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. Okay.
100%. Shelley, there is a risk, but you need to be strong as an individual. You need, again, I go back to the passion. I am only doing work that is meaningful. That's my commitment to myself, academically or non-academically.
What would you then say to another academic that is considering entrepreneurship based on everything you have experienced now? If you could give one piece of advice, what would it be?
Do it because it's meaningful. Do it because you are committed and you want to make this a reality to solve a problem. And if you are committed and if you are transparent and if you're honest in your intentions, I can guarantee to every single person that there are many good people out there that will support you.
Hmm.
But if your intention is that, oh, I came up with this in the next half year, I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna make a lot of money, you may be able to do that. But if you do that, congratulations. But don't do it for that short-sighted thing. Focus on solving the problem. Focus on making that it fulfills the need fully, because
Hmm.
if it is fulfilling the need and people are willing to pay for it, of course you're going to become rich.
Yeah, it should be a byproduct, right? So really it's just if you keep your eyes on the goal, which should be solving the problem.
Yeah. I mean, if you solve the problem and you focus on fulfilling the need and delivering the projects, you will become rich. Your investors are going to be very, very happy because they trusted you. Everybody is going to be happy. The society will be happy. But if you are not comfortable with yourself, why you want to do this, and you're not willing to take what it takes, I mean, there are nights, there are weeks, there are months that you may not even get a chance to do a lot of the other things, but you need to see it as really that kind of thing that you want to go for it.
And that's why I would say that academics that venture into entrepreneurship, there is a risk to your academic career because of the requirements that it can take for you to make sure that that problem gets solved. And it doesn't get solved with publishing papers. No. Yeah, I think it's a super fascinating topic. I don't think that we have enough academics that have gone into entrepreneurship really wish that there was a more sort of like a winding river where you could go in and out, pull up to shore, do some academic works every once in a while, and then get back in your boat and keep going. But we just don't have that type of system in play.
I would say resilience is something that you learn throughout your life. So I would say being resilient in academia is something that many people learned in academia. If they want, again, in academia, there are different type of academics with different ambition level, right? So I wouldn't say that entrepreneurship is the right fit for all academics, but I would say, especially in deep tech, if as an academic I can succeed in my entrepreneurship journey, and I have enough financial means that now I can deploy that to do more work, and right, that perspective will be very helpful for me. But if my vision is that basically I do this one thing and I stop, that's also I mean, not the greatest thing. It's an ongoing journey of self-awareness. One of the most important things for me to tap into entrepreneurship and learning in the hard way over the past few years, and the further it goes, there are new learnings, is really this joy of learning and solving the problem, because every step of the problem that you solve with resilience brings you one step closer to the success. And people need to understand that if you form a company, it is your company. It's not somebody else's company. Even investors are helping your company. So you need to have that compassion for your own company. You need to have that respect for your own company to do what it takes, because it's your company. It's your startup. It's your basically thing that you have created. And you have given birth to this. So you better care more than anybody else. And when it comes to my co-founders, I have the absolute pleasure of having some of the best co-founders in the world, but I have also had few experiences that the expectations do not align, or have not aligned. But at the end of the day, people that come together need to be 100% feeling the ownership, saying it is ours. It's a little thing that any of us not doing what it takes will kill it.
Yeah, that's really great insight onto, like, I think a lot of people, regardless of whether or not you're from academia or not, would be on board 100% with what you just said. That it's everybody's responsibility.
But academic, but being an academic from the beginning, you're taking multiple risks. Very low wages, below average wages, if you want, for what you have been trained for and what experience that you have gained. This is also a risk.
Yeah, that was the financial part. Yeah. So we know that there's always financial risks, but I was more talking about
And Shelly, I mean, you've been in academia too. I mean, none of us picked up this job because of the money. We picked it up because we loved it, because we were given the freedom to do what we like, to do what we think that is meaningful. And this is the part of academia that I absolutely admire.
Yeah, I think there are many reasons why I went into academia, but I ultimately decided to go into entrepreneurship for other reasons. So, yeah,
There's a whole different learning.
It's another game.
Another board.
Completely.
Very beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, Syed, thank you so much for giving your time today and sharing more about your research and sharing more about what's important to you, and also your insights and experiences in entrepreneurship. I definitely think a lot of people will be interested in, seeing where your projects go, because, they're still young and there's still so much to be gained from them. So I think, we really need to track what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Thank you for your time. And it was a pleasure talking to you.